Hey, how's it going? Just wanted to talk about rent and 30-year. My name is Brandon. This is Jamie, my wife. And again, we're going to talk about renting versus a 30-year fixed rate mortgage.
All right. Yeah. Well, I'll get into it. We are not financial advisors or anything. We just are really
Nope.
interested in real estate and finance. So we've both rented and we've owned homes. And so the first thing we want to talk about is kind of the upfront money. So when you're renting, you have to pay a security deposit. That can be anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars, and even more if you have a pet. So, with the security deposit, it's very different, in my opinion, to a down payment on a home because the security deposit just goes into your landlord's bank. Maybe they invest it, maybe they're making money off of it, but what you can be sure of is that you are not making any money off of it. It is just being held for you in a separate location, and you don't get it back until you move out of that property, if you ever do. So you might never see it again. So that is just one thing to think about is, what could you be doing with that money, that couple of hundred or $1,000 that is just sitting in a security deposit.
So for the 30-year fixed rate, traditionally you have a down payment and closing costs. Maybe you pay cash. That would be awesome, and you wouldn't have a mortgage payment. But anyways, down payment, say a conventional loan to eliminate PMI or primary mortgage insurance, maybe that's 20%. And closing costs, Realtor.com basically says 4%, basically estimate for closing costs. So for a $100,000 house, maybe your down payment is $20,000, maybe your closing cost is $4,000. Could be different. And again, there's all kinds of different prices. I think that's pretty obvious. So, that is for a 30-year fixed. You've got your down payment and closing costs.
So after the security deposit on the rental side, you have your rent. So you have monthly rental payments. At least you're probably on a month-to-month rent, or at least at most you're usually on a year. So month-to-month or year-to-year, that rent can change, and it usually only goes up. So for example, one property we had looked at many years ago in California, so rents are crazy. It was $1,200 a month. And then just recently we're looking on Craigslist, kind of looking at different cost comparisons, and it was $1,800 a month. So for this one little property in California, the rent within 5 years had gone up $600.
It's like 500 square feet.
Yeah, it was less than 600 square feet, and it went up $600 a month. So that is just something that you kind of have to factor in when you're renting, is that your budget for rent is going to need to change. You're going to have a little more capacity every year to cover that rent.
So for a mortgage could stay the same. Maybe you get a HELOC, maybe you get a second mortgage, maybe you do a cash out refinance, maybe you do X, Y, and Z, but generally it should stay relatively similar. Maybe you have extra property taxes or something, but mortgage usually stays the same. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a real estate agent. I'm not a lender. So do your due diligence on that. But again, mortgage usually stays the same with some minor exceptions.
So on the plus side for renting is renters don't usually have to pay for any maintenance to the property. If you damage something, yes, that might come out of your security deposit, or you might have to pay for it up front. But in general, if there's a major repair, like the roof's leaking, the refrigerator goes out, something with the electrical or the plumbing, your landlord covers those expenses, which can sometimes be huge, especially for an air conditioning unit, thousands of dollars. You don't have to worry about that. Your landlord does. So that is a +1 on the rental column. If you don't want to have to worry about those little repairs or taking care of those things yourself, you don't have to worry about it.
So if you're an owner, or if you have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, then you're responsible for the maintenance. Maybe you're responsible for the HOA or the homeowners association fees, or homeowners insurance. So you are responsible for all those things. Whereas, just like Jamie said, for rent, you are essentially not responsible. You're just responsible for that rent payment per month. So if you're a landlord and say your air condenser goes out, you're going to need to fix that unless you don't want air conditioning, or if you don't want heat. If your water heater goes out, you're going to have to fix that unless you don't want hot water, and yada yada yada. So just use your imagination. It's you're responsible for those things as having a 30-year fixed rate mortgage.
Yeah. So another restriction that can come with renting is not being allowed to have pets, not being able to kind of do certain things in your own home. Maybe there are, HOA rules, or just rules that the landlord has about having guests over, having people over, having parties, or maybe even you can't sublet your rooms. But the pets was a big thing for us. When we were eventually ready to buy, one of the big motivations was that we have pets, and not a lot of rentals allow pets, at least where we were in California. So if you want to have a little more freedom with kind of what you have going on in your house or your family, or how many kids you have or how many pets you have, owning your own home can definitely be a benefit over renting.
So if you want to have leverage to rent rooms out, if you want leverage to rent your entire house out in the future, if you want leverage to rent out a unit, then having a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, or there's different types of mortgages out there. But anyways, for this video, the 30-year fixed rate, you will have, or you should have leverage to rent out rooms. So want an extra $400 coming in per month and a cool roommate, then 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So maybe for the rental side of things, maybe if you have, if the owner allows you to sublet, then that would be great. But anyways, for the 30-year fixed rate, then you should be able to do that.
Yep. The decision's up to you. So the other thing is that if you want to make upgrades to your home, or paint the walls a different color, or redo your kitchen, whatever it is, those upgrades, if you are renting, don't benefit you. They end up ultimately benefiting the landlord much more. They'll increase the value of the home, make it look nicer, maybe increase the resale value, if it ever comes down to that. You don't see any of that money at the end of the day. Maybe it looks nice for the time that you're living there, but it is ultimately not to your benefit to be upgrading your landlord's property. So if there's something in there that's bugging you, you kind of just have to live with it unless you're willing to put in the money and never see it again.
What is the cost to sell a house? The average cost to sell a house is nearly 15%, according to RamseySolutions.com. The average cost to sell a house is nearly 15% of its sales price, which includes agent commissions, home improvements, closing costs, and moving fees. So if you sell a home for $250,000, you might pay around $37,000 to cover selling expenses. So the cost to sell, you might have quite a hefty payment, basically, or payments in order to sell that house. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not basically straight math like, oh, if I buy a house and it costs $100,000, and if it goes up to $500,000 in 50 years or something, then I get all of that $400,000 or something like that. There's the cost to sell the house. There might be long-term capital gains tax and stuff like that. So things to think of. Yeah.
And the last thing on the rental side that we have for today, which is pretty obvious, is you will never own that rental. If you keep paying rent, you could pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in rent over many years, and you will never own that home. So even with all the closing costs, the cost to sell, at least you still own that home and you're seeing some equity in that. With a rental, you will never see that. You still have a roof over your head, which is a great thing, and depending on your circumstances, that could be the better decision, but you won't ever own that rental unit.
So something that I like to look up is based on these statistics. I did a quick Google search, average home appreciation rate. What is the average home appreciation rate? So I just took that, rounded it up to 4, or that, rounded it up to 4. It's different in different areas, just a disclaimer. And maybe it depreciates. Hopefully that would never happen, but that could potentially happen. That's another thing that could happen to a homeowner. So it's good to kind of study, hey, what's the average appreciation rate of this particular area? House could also, you could also have equity buildup as a homeowner. So you have equity by in your house by, like, I think it's appreciation and paying principal. I believe it's those two. And then, so here is the amortization schedule for a loan amount. So you took out a loan of $200,000 for 30 years with an interest rate of 7%. Now this interest rate most likely would be different, but going to scroll down here and money that you're paying on interest. So it's not all rosy, having a house. You are paying a lot in interest potentially with, the higher interest rate, the higher amount of interest you are paying. So keep that in mind. Again, it's not all rosy, but at the end of the day, this is this is saying if you bought a house, home value $250,000, after 30 years, it appreciates on average 4% per year, then you could have a home value of $810,000 at the end of those 30 years. So, again, it's not all rosy. You have some pros and cons of both. And I really hope that we explain this as thoroughly as possible. We're not financial advisors. We just really like going over these concepts, going over these ideas, and it's just something that we kind of value, that we spend some time thinking about these different things that add to kind of our wealth building journey.
Yeah,
So,
great.
Cool. Have a happy Thanksgiving.